I said it at the time. He should have stayed in school another year. He wasn't ready to play leaving Florida. It's going to be a longer development program than what we think.
It feels like every time we start off the show of the day, we've got news from the night before that we have to address, and we're going to get to all of it. We do have a great show lined up. Will Hill is going to join us later on this hour. Adam Burke, our managing editor, is going to join us in hour number 2. So a whole lot to get to. But you see right off the top, Michael, it's something you and I talked about over the last 2 days. You kind of hinted that you thought the Colts had to make a move to Joe Flacco. They have officially made that move. I'm assuming you're not surprised by it because you kind of in danger of losing the locker room if you don't make a move like this?
Well, I mean, I don't know how Shane Steichen could stand in front of his team and say Anthony Richardson gives us the best chance to win. I mean, his numbers are really bad. You're lying to your team, just like Deshaun Watson and the Browns were lying to their team. I mean, you know, you're an analytical-based organization, and you're telling us that Deshaun Watson is really playing well? Come on, please. And then the next guy goes in there and throws for 400 yards. I mean, Flacco already proved it when he comes in the game and throws. So, look, this is a move that Shane Steichen and the Colts organization had to make. And it doesn't mean that you're not going to come back to Anthony Richardson at some point. It doesn't mean he's a blown pick. But what it does mean is when you picked him 4th overall, you risk the fact that it's going to be a longer development program than what we think. He wasn't ready to play leaving Florida. I said it at the time. He should have stayed in school another year. He came out. He was rewarded with the 4th pick overall in the draft, which made my statement of staying in school ridiculous. But the reality of it is he should have, because he needed more game experience. He was so inconsistent, and everything we're seeing in his first full season where he could stay somewhat healthy is a player that is vastly inconsistent. Look, the telltale sign on Anthony Richardson is watch the game and see how many times the defensive players get their hands on the football. Like, they break up the ball every single throw. And Steichen was just dumb enough to let him throw the ball at the end of the first half and cost himself the game when he throws the pick 6. So, look, the only thing that's saving Steichen from getting called out as a horrendous game manager, which was proven last year during a lot of games, especially the Browns game, is that Richardson's so bad. That's the only thing. We're not picking on Steichen, or else we should be picking on Steichen because he's a very good play caller. He's a very good play designer. He's a horrible head coach. Let's just be clear. He's a horrible head coach in terms of game management and situational football. You can't get any worse than Shane has been, especially when not recognizing that his quarterback couldn't convert a 3rd down. He almost threw a pick 6 on the play before, and he comes back and he gives the game away to the Texans. So, to me, this was a move they had to make for credibility.
We're seeing this number now down to 5 with Joe Flacco getting the start at U.S. Bank Stadium on Sunday night against the Vikings there. And, you know, you mentioned when you look at Shane Steichen, and he's not going to get a whole lot of angst for this because it wasn't his pick. It's Chris Ballard's pick as the GM. Michael, as a GM, what are those conversations like when you make a quarterback change? Does it stay solely with the coach, or that's got to be something that you, the GM, head coach, we're all in this thing together?
I would think the owner's in this too. Look, I think Steichen had a lot to do with the Anthony Richardson pick too, David. I think to me it's obviously Ballard's call, but you're not making that pick unless the coach gives his blessing on it. You just can't do that. There were too many concerns. There were too many things that had to be ironed out. There had to be a development program within place. Now, that got lost because he got hurt last year, but when they put him out there to start the opening of the season, it was comical because this kid was no more ready to be the starting quarterback than I was to land on the moon. I mean, it just wasn't right. He's got a long way to go. And, you know, he's the great Fran Fraschilla once said he's 2 years away from being 2 years away. That's what he was. You know, and so let's be clear. I mean, nobody at the University of Florida thought that Anthony Richardson, they all thought he was a credible athlete. They all thought he had an incredible arm. They all thought he was incredibly fast, but they didn't think he was an incredibly good player yet. And I think that's the gap. So to put him back on the bench, I think it's in the best interest of the kid because every week he wasn't getting better. He was getting worse, whereas Bo Nix is getting better. Jaden Daniels is already good. Mm-hmm. Caleb Williams is getting better. Right? We're seeing this. Drake May is getting better. I mean, this is the one where if you're Chris Ballard, you're disheartened because you're watching these other quarterbacks come in the league and play half decent. And you're saying, wait a minute, what about my guy? Why isn't my guy getting better? Why isn't my guy? Why does my guy look like Zach Wilson and not like Jaden Daniels? There's a question for you.
Yeah, it feels like it's the old chicken and the egg, that you've got examples on both sides of guys that have played right away, as you're mentioning, that are getting some instant success, or you can go back to the Patrick Mahomes sitting for a full year until that last game of the year when Alex Smith was the starting quarterback his rookie year. Josh Allen getting a lot of time early on in his Buffalo days. Well, there is no rhyme or reason to it, is it, Michael? Is it solely based on, man, when I watch him practice, this kid's ready, or I watch him this practice and this kid's not?
That's really what it is, and we don't get a chance to watch practice. But I can't believe there's no way that Anthony Richardson's good in practice, because he's so bad in the games in terms of his location of the football, his inability to really not read the coverage, his inability to look off the coverage, right? Everybody gets focused on reading coverages, right? Well, the coverages are not that challenging. It's reading the triangle, right? Most plays are configured to where you're looking at a triangle. You throw the ball at one point to the next point to the other point. And his ability to process that point to point to point is really bad. And so that's why the defense gets so many hands on the football, because they know where he's thrown it. They're just watching his eyes. They've kind of tuned themselves to see where he is with the ball, and they move him, and he moves them to the location, and then they break on the ball. And then you're almost surprised if he doesn't intercept it. I mean, Houston had their hands on more footballs that it was unbelievable. I'm watching the game, and they had 10 passes broken up, Dave, in the game last week. 10. That's ridiculous. Eric Murray had 3 in the game. To me, we don't talk about that. Is when the defense gets their hands on the football. That's on the quarterback, right? Now, sometimes they get their hands on the ball because they make a great play. Okay, but when they got their hands on 10 balls and one player has his hands on 3, actually 2 players. Lassiter had his hands on 3 too, and then he throws a pick 6. Come on. You can't be a starting quarterback in the NFL. You have no ability to do that. That's ridiculous.
We're going to get a lot into the Thursday night game with the Texans and the Jets, with Houston right now leading this division. But Indianapolis, plus $1.25 to make the postseason. They are 4-4. And I know they've lost twice to the Texans, and Elliot, our producer, said, you don't have to tell me as a Colts fan. I watched through those games and suffered through them. Does this give that kind of re-energize this locker room, Michael, and say, all right, we've got Joe Flacco. We saw what he did last year in Cleveland, literally off his couch, and took them to the playoffs. Can we start thinking maybe of having some visions of grandeur in Indianapolis now?
Well, I mean, look, it still comes back to, can they play good enough on defense? I thought last week they really changed up a lot of what they did. They tried to pressure the passer a lot more, and they put C.J. Stroud under a lot of pressure. I thought he played well. But at some point, this defense is just not good enough. It doesn't stop the run. They're 30th in yards allowed. People love to run the football on them. They're 28th in yards allowed overall. And when they go outside that dome, they're going to give up big plays. Last week they held Houston to 96 yards rushing. That was the first time they did it. But they have struggled to have consistency within their defense. And a lot of this is injuries. But they had Buckner back last week, which is what they need. I think, to me, when you break down their schedule, their best win of the year has come against Pittsburgh, right? They were able to beat Pittsburgh by a field goal. They've lost a lot of close games. I mean, they beat a bad Miami team 16-10. That was an ugly game. Miami, you can't get, Tennessee, they beat 20-17. Tennessee's not any good, but they're in all these close games. The one thing about the Colts, they're the best team so far this year in covering spreads. I mean, they've done I think they're 6-1 going into, or 7-1 going into this weekend, Dave.
Yeah, it is rather amazing when you look at their schedule. You're right. That Steeler win, and boy, if Justin Fields doesn't fumble it late, they might throw that game away. But they are 4-4, and you see they don't have the bye until later on this year.
Thanks for watching, but don't let the betting insights end here. If you want an extra edge this football season, you can get a month of VSiN Pro right now, absolutely free. That means access to our betting insights, analysis, and tools like our betting splits at zero cost to you. Click the link in the description to sign up.